Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I wanted to offer you my review and impressions of Delta Force Hawk Ops, which is a brand new military shooter that is in alpha right now, and it is seriously wanting to compete with Battlefield and Call of Duty and doing a fantastic job to have mostly got positive things to say about this game. The gameplay you're seeing is me playing Delta Force Hawk Ops on PC. I'm playing ultra settings, but 1080p for a unique capturing window in the bed rig, and the consoles look about the same graphically. Very pretty looking game. So in case you haven't heard or noticed, Hawk Ops is a military-themed FPS game that is both a tactical extraction shooter like Tarkov and also a large map battlefield grindy spammy kind of game. And I gotta tell you, I was pleasantly surprised by the overall quality of Delta Force Hawk Ops and have mostly good things to say about it today in my review. I was also very happy with the extraction mode, which is an extremely rare thing for me to say because I usually hate tactical shooters and I get bored with slow-paced extraction modes, but this one kind of worked for me. It might actually be the first one that's ever worked for me. There's a lot to cover in this review, but in the very beginning, I just wanted to hammer home that the game feels good. Like, seriously, Hawk Ops feels polished, as if it wasn't rushed, as if the team knew what they wanted to make to begin with, as if we've already been through several rounds of quality assurance. It feels really, really good. And Hawk Ops appears to be a game that prides itself on realism and gameplay fundamentals. So let's talk about the realism first. It has a true military theme that is thus far serious. There are no clown operators, no Nicki Minaj, Snoop Dogg, Homelander, etc. None of the anime characters that you see in Call of Duty. Almost all of the characters in the game are very realistic looking or grounded in reality. Almost all of the weapons in the game appear to be real weapons, and most of them use their real world names. Like, thank God, like in this game, an MP5 is just called an MP5. A SCAR is just called a SCAR, you know, an AK is just called an AK. There's not any sort of goofy, crazy, generic brand, non-copyrighted name for it, so that's actually very relieving. It helps me mentally know what in the world I'm doing and talking about here. The operators, the gear they wear, the weapons, the vehicles, the score streaks, all are animated and rendered very realistically. The animation team did a top-notch job. You can see the bullets in the chamber when you inspect the weapons. You can see them in the magazine, either full or empty during the reload. Most of the characters move around. They have a kind of weight and momentum. You don't feel that as a gamer, but you see that on enemies, and they look pretty good, to be honest. And one of the things I really appreciate about it is that everything looks really good and clean. It's as if the developers had the foresight, and very few developers ever do, to instead of trying to crank out as many RTX reflections as possible and blow out my GPU and add dust and flare and scattering and mess everywhere to bog down my system, they decided to strip all that down and go with a really nice, clean aesthetic, which makes everything look really crisp. It runs really efficiently, and I can really see the enemies I'm looking at. Thank God they're not, you know, obscured by all the junk on the map. And speaking of maps, the maps are absolutely huge as well. They're every bit as big as Battlefield maps, if not maybe a little bit bigger. They're designed very similarly. They don't seem to have any sort of render or draw distance problems. The one thing I did notice, though, is that when you pick your spawn point, that's actually when it loads the map for you. So your spawn delay is actually the system loading the map. Kind of a little workaround there, but whatever. The base gameplay and its combat loop that comes from it, all very smooth, very happy with that. All the weapons I handled felt very polished, professionally designed. The recoil, the reloads, the overall handling felt great. It felt like a top-notch Call of Duty team worked on this, and every single weapon in the game is projectile, but like Battlefield, actually not like Battlefield does half. This game, they all travel at their real-life bullet speed, so for most ranges, you're not really going to lead much or at all. Most of the time, you just shoot straight ahead. Really, the only time I was leading is when people were so far away, I was just shooting at a little cluster of pixels, or sniping. Sniping's a little bit of a different animal. So yeah, the guns feel great. They handle really well. They feel satisfying, masterable, customizable. All the guns have an outrageous amount of attachments for them and customizations, which I didn't even remotely get into. The game does feature leaning, which allows you as a player to manually toggle it. It's not automatic, and that makes sense for almost any modern shooter, and especially one with a tactical mode. Several of the weapons you pick up will have alternative fire modes, variable zoom scopes, unique attachments, great looking inspections. They all kind of have their own little personality and things going on, and I'm really happy with it. You've got the standard crouch, sprint, prone, climb, sneak, sort of gameplay that you see in a lot of FPS games, i.e., you know, normal human being movements, not too much climbing, not too much jumping, not too much sprinting, a little bit on the slower side of things, but it helps keep it grounded in reality. One of the things that does get a little overwhelming, and you probably actually see me fat fingering here in some of the gameplay, is every character has 4 gadgets minimum. If you're playing the tactical mode, you might have even more. You have a full inventory of weapons and grenades and wrist gadgets and scans and passive and abilities. It's got a system for you to ping, a map that you can interact with and mark objectives. So there is a lot of stuff going on. And even on PC with a whole big keyboard, it is a little bit difficult to control. Oh, and there's vehicles. There's a whole bunch of them, as in a variety of them. There aren't that many on the map at any given time, but there are a lot of vehicles you can choose from for flavor. I think they keep the number on the map limited so that they're not quite as oppressive as they are in Battlefield. Most of the vehicles I handled are easy enough to use except for the helicopter. I got in the helicopter briefly as in the pilot. I don't know if it was just not designed with PC controls in mind. Maybe I'm a terrible pilot. Definitely inexperienced. That one was really hard. Most of the tanks and APCs and stuff were very straightforward. There are Call of Duty style score streaks that you earn as you play through the map, a certain amount of credits. It's a cumulative score, so even if you die, it doesn't reset, does not have to be an actual streak, and it opens up this big sort of menu wheel where you can scroll and select which ones you want to buy. The big lethal ones cost a lot, so you really need to be slaying out if you want to save up your points to call in something big, but some of the smaller ones like smoke screens are pretty attainable. The game does have a bit of a hero shooter thing going on with it, in that your operators level up and unlock, and each one has their own unique set of passives and abilities. None of those will stop you from dying if you get shot in the face. So for example, there's a medic that can heal people, bring them back. There's a sniper that can reveal enemies and has a mobile spawn beacon. Again, a lot like Battlefield. A standard assault guy, he can run a little bit faster, and he's got this arm-launched grenade thing that's pretty fun. Helps him push through some choke points in close quarters combat. Each one of these is customizable with a variety of gadgets and unlocks. There's operators to unlock that I haven't even gotten to yet, and I think that they're overall working pretty well. A lot of FPS games that include these type of hero shooter mechanics, especially when you're mixing that with like realistic shooter, can get very frustrating, but in Delta Force Hawk Ops, it all seems to kind of work, at least here in alpha. It doesn't seem very annoying, and this level of complexity is to say nothing about the extraction mode in the game. So far, you've mostly seen the Battlefield-like mode, so let's talk about extraction. Extraction mode is a lot like Tarkov, where you and a team of other people will infiltrate a map. The only gear you get is the gear that you bring with you in the preparation load-up screen before that, and there's this really complicated gearing up screen. It actually reminds me a lot of Tarkov or PUBG, where you've got your backpack and all these little pouches and little geometry puzzles to fit in all the med kits and the ammo and this jammer and this ability and this other thing and this gun that you're trying to loot out of it. And it's, you know, a little bit complicated, but in a very sort of FPS game standard sort of way. I was able to adapt to that very, very well. But you infiltrate on a map. You don't exactly know what's on the map, so you have to explore a little bit, get a little intel, tell what's going on. There are AI enemies on the map and real enemies as well. Obviously, the real ones present much more of a challenge than the AI ones. The AI ones, I feel, could be cranked up a little bit to be a little bit meaner. Mostly what they do now is when you kill them, you reveal yourself to the real enemies, and killing any enemy, AI or real, will allow you to loot their body and steal their gear. One time this worked really well for me because I killed a guy who had a pretty much fully kitted out MP5 that I didn't even have unlocked yet, so I just yoinked that one. And if you extract from the map, you get to keep all of the stuff that you extracted with, because it's, you know, an extraction shooter. And if you die, you lose literally everything and leave behind it all on the map, and you come back with nothing. This mode features an extremely realistic health and damage system. If you can damage individual limbs. So for example, if you sprain your knee, you run a little slower. You get shot in the arm, your aim is kind of like all wobbly. You can take hits to the stomach and head and things like that. And you have to individually patch up the specific areas on your body that are injured to get back to normal performance. And seeing as how you have limited medical supplies that you can carry with you, there's a limited amount of stuff that you can patch. If you or a teammate dies, they go down and are available to be rezzed, just like Battlefield or like most other type of BR type games, except you can dump a mag into somebody and just make them unrezzable. You can finish off the corpse. Some people do that. The map that you play on for extraction isn't huge. I've seen bigger ones, but it's certainly big enough for the mode. When you're there on this big map, exploring, getting your good, doing the things, it feels a little bit like multi-team search and destroy from Call of Duty, because there's a handful of other little teams all moving around the map trying to complete their objectives, and if you do cross into them, they'll kill you in a split second with bots here and there to keep it spicy. So it's big enough. Beyond that, seeing as how the health system is a little more realistic, there's leaning, there's a lot of tactical play, a lot of smoke, a lot of scan, a lot of use your inventory and gadgets very wisely. It has a little bit of a Rainbow Six feel to it, which kind of works for me. And I gotta say, I ended up liking the tactical extraction mode. Again, that's a very rare thing for me to say, because tactical and extraction shooters usually bore me to tears. I'm a big dumb shoot and scoot kind of guy. I like Apex Legends and Black Ops 3 and Unreal and Quake kind of games, or just bounce around the map like a rabbit just spraying bombs at people. That's really my number one thing. And the slower you go, the more boring it gets for me. But this kind of works somehow. The pacing, the structure, the combat loop, all of it just was enough to feel exciting and kind of right. It felt like I was really there. The other available mode is the Battlefield mode. It's probably basically Battlefield, but probably better. The scale of the maps are almost identical to Battlefield. The amount of players almost identical to Battlefield. The zone capturing, ticket response, squad player respawns, all very, very similar to Battlefield, except again, maybe better. Maybe they did a better Battlefield than Battlefield. It's like Battlefield, but with less vehicles, more realistic weapons and gunfight, and for the most part, better designed objectives. Most of the objective capture areas are kind of like small Call of Duty maps, so that help keeps things fun and fresh. And if you've played any big team battle game ever over the last 20 years, you'll be instantly familiar with the flow of this mode and how it works. Some people absolutely hate these big team kind of modes because it's very chaotic, very cluttered, you know, a lot of lemmings are running through the choke point, ready to get slaughtered, a lot of smoke, a little spam. You know, you get flanked easily, you get killed by somebody you didn't see, somebody launched a bomb from 500 meters away, there's nothing you can do about it. It's even easy to dump 100 rounds of your light machine gun into enemies and still not be able to finish off the massive swarm of people on your stream. And the biggest flaw with this mode is that it's not hard at all for you as an individual to play fantastically and get 50 plus kills, but still lose the game because your other 63 teammates are potatoes. You'll definitely spawn on top of some grenades, there'll be some unpleasant pushes, but despite all of that, it does the other part of Battlefield, the fun part, really well, and it is really fun. I feel like you've got fun pushes, fun objectives to capture. You only have a couple of vehicles at any given time to deal with, so while they are there, they're not particularly annoying. It's a big, crazy, large-scale infantry grinding-based game. You can snipe, you can use pistols, you can use AR to push, you can use a shotgun to push through some of these interior choke points that are really nasty. It feels really good, and I'm going to say this over and over and over again, like Battlefield, but probably better. It's just an infantry-based game that legitimately just works. And I think one of the big things is it has realistic movement. I actually scaled back the movement of Call of Duty and Battlefield. No wingsuits, no flying, parachutes are a little janky, and it kind of works for this mode. It kind of keeps everybody clustered in one particular area. And I've really only got 2 complaints about this game, 2 gripes, 2 downsides, and both are really very minor. Number one is that your character has a lot going on to manage. I've talked about a lot. You got a lot going on with your guns. You got a lot going on with the team, a lot going on with your abilities, a lot going on with your tactical gear, a lot going on with your health, a lot going on with the map, a lot going on with the ping system. It is really overwhelming at first. And even on PC, I end up struggling with the amount of button presses to do all of the things quickly, especially because I play in the bed on the split keyboard, so I've got half of a keyboard to play on. It takes a bit of getting used to. Once you get more used to it, it's a lot better. It's initially going to be very, very frustrating. The second gripe is extremely minor and perhaps just unique to me, which is that at the end of the day, even though it's really well made, Delta Force Hawk Ops is just another military-themed kind of shooter game. I've been playing these games for almost 20 years now, and I'm getting pretty close to being burnt out on military shooters. I often find myself not caring what Call of Duty 69 or Battlefield 420 is up to, or how realistic we rendered the internal mechanisms of the UMP submachine gun or something like that. Maybe that's just me. I'm turning into a boomer. I'm looking for something new. I'm getting a little tired of it. I've been in the mood for something a little more spacey, more colorful, more sci-fi, more wild, more unique and innovative. And Delta Force Hawk Ops has a lot of stuff in it that you've just seen in other games before. This game doesn't have anything that you haven't seen in Battlefield or haven't seen in Call of Duty or haven't seen in Tarkov, but it is expertly put together. Usually when you compete with one of those games, you have to do a better job than those games to attract the target audience, and they might have done that. I don't think that this is innovative gaming. I don't think that this is breaking the mold. I don't think that this is radical or new. I do think this is super well made and polished. So instead of being the next revolution in gaming, this just feels like what Battlefield 2042 should have been. This is just fun. This is just good old standard polished gaming, and I'm here for it. So overall, fantastic game. Really like Delta Force Hawk Ops. Would encourage you to try to play the alpha or the upcoming beta whenever that is available. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.